One of the best things to do in professional wrestling is to play What If.
Oh,
And that's
yes.
what Casey Thompson and I are going to do on this week's edition of the In-Ring Wrestling Podcast. There are so many what ifs, and usually when what if would happen, then of course it leads to a whole bunch of other what ifs. But we're going to basically stay in one ballpark with a very simple topic, Casey, because fans have been asking to it. First of all, that's Casey Thompson. He's the man who created the In-Ring Wrestling Podcast, an opportunity to shine some light on some of the dudes and dudettes who were instrumental in making big wrestling stars by giving of themselves and their bodies and their time, sacrificing their own careers in a lot of shape, form, and fashion. Casey's been doing this a long time, and I'm just along for the ride here. My name's Kevin Kelly, and I'm glad you're with us. How are you, Casey?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm in a different studio today. My daughter and her boyfriend's down for the weekend. We went to a tribute band last night for Aerosmith, and they announced them as the greatest tribute band ever. And they were as a wrestling term would say, they were the drizzling shits. They were horrible. Horrible. But we had a good time. We made the best of it. Like when you go to a lot of different shows, you're working at some shows that it's going to be really good, like the show that Kevin Kelly's going to have soon. That's going to be a
Saturday, August the
premiere.
9th. Jesus,
That's right.
I need people to
The
buy
wrestling.
tickets.
Yep. The pro wrestling. So
Yep.
get your tickets. So get your
We
mama
made
and
it.
daddy get your mama from the kitchen, your daddy from the grill. Load
That's
up in the
it.
pick 'em up truck, like old
Get
Blackjack
grandma
Mulligan would
on.
say.
Oh, God, I love all that stuff. There's so many different little things, and we'll do the what if here because I got a doozy of them, and it's based around some fact. Could be where
Okay.
there's smoke, there's fire, as they say. We'll see.
Yes.
So many little gimmicks now that you could do on social media and online. We created a ticket because it was this big unwieldy address. We're selling tickets through Eventbrite.com, which is a great service, and it's Eventbrite.com/ blah 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 blah.
So you right off the
Alphabet
start
soup.
looking legitimate, having a legitimate ticket outlet.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
legit. But then it was like such a long copy paste. And how do you tell somebody, just go to eventbrite.com and search the pro wrestling? You're never sure if they're going to find it. So we found a really like cool URL, web address that was available. I couldn't believe it. GetTheTix.com.
Oh, nice.
GetTix.com.
And then you
And
redirected it to the hyperlink.
Yeah.
Ooh, look at us talking all this technical talk here. That's crazy thinking. Two old timers can do that.
Okay, so us old timers here, we're sitting around, we're scratching our noodles, like going, have you heard this story? I did hear that story. What do you think about? I don't know. Maybe we should talk about it. You know what? There might be some truth to this GD rumor. There's a possibility, and this is a big what if, folks, that Vince McMahon could somehow get involved with AEW.
Wow.
Now let's play the what if. And of course, since Vince was drummed out of the WWE and for all the terrible things he did and everything like this.
Allegedly.
And of course, there was some, right? Allegedly, till he's proven guilty in court. It's allegations. Then, then of course there was that famous picture with Shane McMahon, and they were all, buddy there at the airport, taking pictures, and then they were all the Super Bowl together. And now here we are a few months later, and there seems to be this rumor creeping around that Vince and Tony Khan could be talking business.
Wow.
Casey Thompson. And it could just be because Vince has talked about wanting to do his own thing, apparently made an offer to buy the bare knuckle fighting championship, but was told no thanks. And now AEW, who's been doing their own thing. Tony's been managing it, running it, and in many ways has modeled himself after Vince.
Right.
Could be having chats, some conversations with Vince about this, that, and the other. First of all, do you put any stock into these rumors? And what is it? What is the old wrestling axiom about things that we see and hear?
Oh, well, what you're talking about, the problem is you have to take everything and throw it against the wall and see what sticks.
Right.
Because the first time you just, I've been around the world like 35 times. I've had bookings in every continent, every country, everywhere in the world. But have they taken place? No. I say now, I don't believe things until they already had happened. Because you could have your ticket on the way there, and there could be no show. So you
Right.
never know until after it happened. So taking that into account, um, I never say never because the world of wrestling is crazy and bizarre. So anything can happen in this business. So the what if Vince McMahon partners up with Tony Khan in some aspect for AEW, I think right off the bat they would get a huge jump in the ratings. The viewerships would go up on their streaming platforms and everything just because of Vince McMahon. And I would tell you this, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that allegedly Vince McMahon has done um, wrong. And if you notice, a lot of people, especially the boys in the business, have kept quiet about it because they
Right.
never want to piss off Vince because you never know when he's going to pop back up. So that's the one reason why I say there's a good possibility this could possibly happen. So you never know what if going to happen, but I think it would be best for Tony Khan to do right now, in my
Oh,
opinion.
right. And that was sort of where my mind was at when I first heard this rumor. And again, when you hear rumors within the business, like Casey says,
Yeah.
if you consider the source, you go, okay. And in this case, the source is very solid. And
Old
it wasn't
saying,
floated out,
telephone, telegraph, tell a wrestler.
tell a wrestler. um, but yes, you see nothing. You hear nothing. You believe nothing that you hear. Half of what you see. And
Right.
Casey, yes, has been world champion 15 times, according to things that he's been told. He has
Yep.
he's made umpteen millions of dollars. I can't even begin to
Oh,
describe the millions of dollars that you have made,
yes.
and have wrestled on every continent, including Antarctica. First wrestling tour into Antarctica.
That was a cold show.
It was a sold show, but it was a cold show.
Yeah.
Um, but again, and Vince has both heat, good heat and bad heat, and he has name value, both good and bad. But the biggest thing that he has is knowledge.
Absolutely.
And that's where you cannot pass up on an opportunity to at least sit down and have those conversations with Vince.
Right.
If you're Tony Khan. If you bring on and my first thought was, oh my gosh, he could be like his, he could be like his Obi-Wan. He could be like his Yoda. He could teach Tony so much.
Right.
Does Vince want to be in the position to teach? Don't exactly think so. I think Vince wants to get back and get out there. Now,
Do you think?
I
Do
know
you think
both of our
Tony?
minds
Do you think
went
Tony?
to Vince wanting to get back because he wants revenge.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
He wants to get even, right?
Absolutely.
So that would motivate him to want to do this with Tony Khan, an existing company. If I can't start something on my own, let me at least move in with the guy who was living next door, and let me keep an eye on what they're doing.
Yeah.
It used to be Eric Bischoff. We beat him and eventually brought him in and did business with him. And now it's Tony Khan. We could beat him easily, but instead, let's partner up with him and let's keep an eye on what TKO is doing.
Yeah.
There could be so much. Plus, there's the television aspect of it. And don't you think that the folks at Warner Brothers wouldn't be interested in Vince McMahon? I don't, even if Tony Khan was like out of ego and pride said, I don't need Vince. And he may truly believe
Right.
that. And they may not jibe and they may not work well together. I don't know. But it wouldn't Warner Brothers say to Tony, wow, you're going to take that call? You're going to sit down and have that meeting, aren't you? I would think they would.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because
I mean, you can say anything you want about Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
The fact is, he made wrestling where it is today.
Exactly.
Okay. He might not be the smartest mind ever in the business, but he's smart enough to know to keep the smartest people around him. Pat Patterson, different guys like that. Now it's Michael Hayes. different people like that. He's had around the smartest people, in his, entourage, his over the years. So, but you can't deny the fact that Vince has taken wrestling from a regional territory
Mm-hmm.
into not national, more worldwide. Everyone knows when they say wrestling, it automatically WWE,
Right.
and that was because of Vince McMahon. What he saw, the long-term goal is to dominate and take over everything. He did. So you're right. That knowledge, if he could pair up with Tony Khan, boy, that could be, that could be scary.
It would be, and it would at least, in the short term, it would juice ratings like you wouldn't believe because the curiosity factor of Vince. Same thing with CM Punk. CM Punk did the exact same thing for AEW. And, the highest ratings that we ever had on Collision were the debut episode, of course, but we also had CM Punk, and he was a consistent ratings getter on that show. Heat, 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 heat. Good and bad. But boy, name value, amen. Absolutely right. Does the idea of a Vince McMahon returning to wrestling make you think that, and the possibility of it, does it put pressure on Triple H and them? Do you think Triple H is ringing the bell over there going, hey, boys, by the way, Storm's coming? Or are they aware of what Vince is? TKO has a reputation of having a bit of an ego and
Right.
that they think they know everything. And I think Triple H knows his father-in-law better than anybody. And he might be
Is
saying, hey,
exactly what I was
boys.
going to say.
Yeah.
Exactly what I was going to say. He knows Vince better than anyone in those corporations, and I guarantee you, he knows that there's no way Vince, at what age he was, is ready to sit down and just. Vince isn't the type of person to sit back and just relax and take it easy. You worked for him on a regular basis. He's probably the first person there, the last person to leave. That's all
Yep.
he does is eat, breathe, and sleep is wrestling.
Yep.
So I'm sure Triple H is like, he's definitely worried that with that kind of platform already set up, already established, and the way that AEW is, when Vince came in, if Tony Khan would allow it to let him do what, all the stuff that Vince knows that he's learned over the 40, 50 years that he's been around in the business, guarantee you Triple H is sweating it a little bit.
Okay, so let's take it back to when you were actively in WCW. You were there every week. You were, part of every taping. You were there for Nitros. You were doing all this and that. What was the feeling amongst the boys in the height of the ratings war about Vince? Was there a bit of a nationalistic pride for WCW, like we got him on the run and we're going to beat his ass, or Vince is too smart and he's eventually going to figure out a way, even though we're winning now, that Vince is going to make a comeback here?
No, I don't think it was like that. Um, I mean, everyone would look at their ratings from segment to segment, from their
Mm-hmm.
match to see what their ratings. So everyone on the show, from first segment to the last segment of the show, everyone was trying to have the highest rated numbers. So because they wanted to um, beat WWF, WWE, in the ratings. So I think all in all, it was more of a rivalry. Rivalry. Everyone wanted to be the best. So, and they had the platform to do it. So they just wanted to, it wasn't a whole thing like that. They just wanted to win the war, basically.
Right. I know that when there was never any internal doubt from our side, from the WWF side, about Vince. And at that point, it was really Vince and Linda because we were working for a small business. We were working for a small business owner. And
Right.
Vince and Linda owned the WWF. And yes, it was a large company, but it certainly wasn't a publicly traded company.
It
It
was
was
still
Vince and
family
Linda's.
owned
Yeah, it was a family owned
and
business.
family
It was
ran.
Vince and
Yeah.
Linda's money. The kids were being groomed and grown up within the business. Shane was already working for his dad. Stephanie came in and was an intern. Actually, was was my intern, was our intern.
Really?
Yeah, in the new
Wow.
media department.
Wow, there's a
It's so
headline
interesting.
right there.
Stephanie worked for
Kevin
Kevin Kelly.
Kevin Kelly grooms Stephanie McMahon for her place in WWE.
We said,
I love all these things we learn about your time with the WWF, Kevin. I think
yeah, I
it's
know.
great.
I
And
ruined
I put my
China.
little special twist on it all,
I ruined
to
China and
always
Triple
definitely
H.
make you look good.
I did a bunch of horrible stuff, right? Like I ruined relationships. I brought couples together. I broke them apart. We said, well, what are we going to do with Stephanie as our intern? Have her go get lunch? No, we're going to go get her lunch.
Yeah, exactly.
We couldn't, but she was awesome. Like, and what a first of all, what a nice person. She was just always great. And
I do have questions about that now.
Yeah.
Did she come in there with the attitude that my dad's the boss? Or did she come in like, okay, I'm ready to learn, I'm ready to work, I'm ready to jump in and do whatever you want me to do?
1,000% the second one. She was so
Really?
like, you wouldn't know that she was Vince's daughter. We of course knew she was Vince's daughter, but never once echoed her dad's name. Never once said, "Well, Dad would say this," or Vince would say. If she referred to her father, she would always refer to him as Vince.
Mm-hmm.
And we would never run things by her to get like an inside perspective. What do you think Vince is going to say if we do something like we never did that? If we had a Vince question, we would ask Vince, and we would have Vince Russo go and ask Vince because he had a pipeline to Vince. He was helping write TV. He was helping with a bunch of different stuff on the television end. So we would ask those questions through Vince Russo rather than Stephanie. We never had any qualms about saying or doing outrageous things in front of her because of who she was. It didn't change. Like, it didn't make us walk up straighter or be less apt to bust each other's balls.
Like, ooh, the boss is here.
Yeah, we weren't like that. And Stephanie was very much one of the boys, if you will, in that regard. There was a young man who did work on the staff who, kind of like our pal Dennis Knight, had designs of asking Stephanie out. And the idea of doing that was resoundingly, please don't do that. Please don't do that. That's a bad idea. Please don't.
Was there an unwritten rule from that was known, just leave Stephanie alone, she's off limits?
That's a good question. Yes, I think there was.
Okay.
And again, there was always that, you just don't want to cross that line. Stephanie's beautiful woman. Come on. And she's smart and she's talented. And if you're young and the same age as her and single, of course you would want to ask her out. She's awesome.
Okay, let's do the reverse roles. Because there's always, when it comes to I have a boy and girl, and there's one rule for my daughter, then there's a rule for my guy. Whether it's right or wrong is just the way it is.
It is
now,
the way it is.
Shane, was it like, if the female employees or talent wanted to date Shane, was that okay? Or again, was it the same unwritten rule?
No, that's a very good question.
See what I'm saying? The double standard?
There was the double standard because I don't think
there is one in everything, no matter what. If you're a father, you have a boy and a girl, trust me, there's double standards.
Yeah. I don't think, listen, let's just throw a name out there. Let's say Trish Stratus, right? Both her and Shane, if they were single and they started dating, I don't think anybody would blink an eye. But if Stephanie started dating somebody on the roster, I think there would have been a huge outcry about that. I think that would have been a problem.
Right. Well, I mean, she did. What happened then?
Well, there you go. And that became the big thing.
See, this show, there's so much stuff we can go into 20 different things. Because I had another question. I wanted your opinion. Of course, I'm very interested in Test and Stephanie. My other question is, going 20 years, 25 years, 30 years later, Vince Russo.
Well, okay.
He seems to be very bitter. very angry. Um, what's your thoughts on Vince Russo in the present tense?
So I have a lot of respect for Vince Russo, and I worked with him
Okay.
very, very closely. He helped me. He saved my WWF career
Oh wow.
because after my first year in the company, Kevin Dunn, who never wanted me there, Kevin Dunn thought I was another Southern
I've
announcer,
always hated
another,
him.
yeah, I did too, another Southern announcer like Jim Ross. He did not want me. In fact, it was a 3-person committee that was put together to help pick the next announcer because Vince wanted to step away from the mic. That meant JR was going
Mm-hmm.
to move up into the main role on Raw. And that meant we needed to hire somebody underneath JR to start to
Right.
do the international shows, the other shows that Jim Ross was doing because he was going to be too busy. Plus, at the
All the
same time,
syndicated shows.
all the syndicateds. Then at the same time, JJ Dillon stepped away from talent relations. He quit the company, joined WCW. And who was going to run talent relations? At first, for a minute, it was Bruce, and then it became JR. So there was no way that JR was going to be able to do these little syndicated programs. Definitely needed somebody. And they brought a bunch of wannabe announcers in, including me, to an audition in Stamford. And I was the one that was chosen by the committee. The committee was the head of HR at the time. Her name was Lisa Wolf. It was Bruce Pritchard, and it was Kevin Dunn. And the vote was 2-1. Bruce and
Gotcha.
Lisa Wolf chose me. Kevin Dunn chose not me. And he was outvoted. I was the one who met Vince. Vince said, he's fine. Let's go ahead. And I got the job. So after
Were you
1
all
year,
sitting in the Were you all sitting in the waiting room with your suits on, with your little script and everything? Like when you see you have like all the models for
casting
a
call,
casting call.
there was a beautiful woman who was sitting in the lobby of the television studio when I arrived. And she had already done her audition. She was waiting on her ride back to wherever, the train station or
Mm-hmm.
the airport. I'm not quite sure. I didn't know who she was. I had never seen her before, never saw her again.
Did you
But I
know
was
anyone else that do you know who they are now that auditioned for the time that you were um your spot?
no,
So
I
there
do
was
not.
no like okay,
I don't know if they brought in a Mike Tenay or if they brought in a Joey Styles. I'm trying to think of
right.
wrestling announcers that were
Sure.
active in the industry at the time. I can't think. I don't know of anybody else that was brought in, and I know that there was a national headhunter. Um, people who go out and look for somebody to fill a role. There
Mm-hmm.
was a headhunting company that was involved because they were involved in the negotiations as they were. And the negotiations were, here's your deal, take it or leave it. 1 year, 75 grand. And I was like, it's not a lot of money when you move to New York, when you move to the Northeast, well, take it or leave
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I took it.
You have to take
And
it though.
I did. I had to take it.
Yeah.
And after 1 year,
Yeah.
who the hell is calling me? Who the hell is Spam Risk? I don't know this guy. He calls me 10 times a day.
Oh,
Um,
he's on my friends too. I get that too.
what a jerk. Never leaves a
Spam
message
likely.
either.
Yeah.
Um, So I signed a contract, started June 24th, 1996, and by the 1st of June 97, I was told my services were no longer needed, that they were not going to renew my contract.
Oh.
But Vince Russo told me this story. He and Vince McMahon are at Vince's house writing TV, and the phone rings. Vince answers, yes, it's Kevin Dunn. Hello, Kevin. It's on speakerphone. And he says to Vince and Vince, hey, I'm going to let Kevin Kelly go. And Vince sat up, had a look in his eye like, why? Moved his glasses down. Why? What's up, pal? And Vince Russo said that Kevin Dunn on the phone had a bunch of non-answers. Well, it's not really working out. I don't really see him fitting in, just kind of want to go in a different direction.
His own
And
personal preference.
he said it without saying it. And Vince
Right.
Russo said, well, can I have him? Because he's been writing for me and doing a bunch of stuff over here, and we definitely could use the help. And Vince and Kevin Dunn said, "Oh yeah, sure, absolutely, you can have him. That's no problem. We'll work on the transfer now. All right, guys. Hey,
Does
listen.
Vince have to okay that though?
Well,
Or is it
that's why he was calling. And
Mhm.
and he Kevin Dunn quickly got off the phone, and Vince talked about it, and it was, well, yeah, pal, of course. Vince Vince McMahon always liked me.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have a problem with me. He thought I was doing a good job. So that was the reason why I stuck around, was because of Vince Russo, and saved my job. And so I went and worked for Vince Russo. Vince Russo was in charge of the magazines. He was the editor in chief, and he gave me the job of managing editor, which I didn't even know what that was. That's just the guy who makes sure that people have deadlines, we're making them. Right. That's really it. And I was a writer.
From that point where you were taken off of TV, how long was it before you went back on TV?
About 2 or 3 months.
Oh, really? Not too long.
Yeah, not too long. What
did you go back to?
I went
backstage.
Well, no. So I was doing both. When I got moved over to the TV studio, I got a cut in pay.
Oh, wow.
Big time. And because that's what the job paid. Now, I was able to negotiate a little bit more because I was like, I can't afford to live here. I can't afford to live. They cut me from 75 to 45.
Whoa, no.
And I was like, I appreciate the offer, but I can't. Well, okay. I said, well, we'll call you back. We'll see what we can do. Okay, we got you 55. All right. I'll live with that for now.
Yeah.
And was just making the best of it, and then got the call and got a raise because now they put me back on TV. So I was an employee for the magazines, but I also had a TV contract.
Oh, okay.
So between the two, I went from 55 to 85. So I wound up getting a $10,000 raise off of my original deal.
Right.
And that was simply because Vince McMahon went back to Kevin Dunn and said, now, in the interim, Kevin Dunn hired Michael Cole. Mm-hmm. And had Michael Cole.
Which at the time sounded exactly like you, which was ironic.
He kind of did. Yeah, and we come from similar backgrounds. We're both born in New York, both, trained in whatever, and our voices were similar.
Right.
Same age. I think he's a year older than me. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, so we did sound alike. And so then I was working on doing the syndicated shows again. Cole and I were going to join JR for the first hour. JR and the King were going to do the second hour. And that was how that all started. So it went from me having a job to me not having a job to me working for Vince Russo to then me working both for Vince Russo and Kevin Dunn.
Yeah.
In the span of a couple of months. And Kevin Dunn never harbored any ill will towards me, at least not publicly. I never was.
So Vince brought you back to TV.
Vince McMahon brought me back to TV. He most certainly did, because Kevin Dunn called me. Well, Kevin Dunn's assistant, Sue DeRosa, called me. Hey, Kevin wants to meet you in his office. Vince is here, and they want to talk to you about something. Okay. Hey, Vince Russo, they need me over at the TV studio. Can I run over there real quick? Of course. So I drive over there. I go upstairs. Vince McMahon is in Kevin Dunn's office. Hi, pal. Here's what we want to do. And he explains the situation with the split crews. And I was like, that sounds great. That sounds awesome.
The SmackDown.
That became SmackDown later, but we were the split crew for the first hour of Raw.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yep. So we did Raw. We did WWF Raw, which was from 8 to 9. And then from 9 to 10 was Raw is War. 2 separate 1-hour programs as opposed to a 2-hour block, even though it was a continuous 2-hour block. And it was a ratings gimmick. It was a way to sort of trick the system in a way. Like when they do a 4-hour combined Dynamite and Collision, the ratings reflect, Collision got for 4 hours of AEW programming from 8 to midnight, they had a significant number because the 8 o'clock part was high. And when you look by, the 11:45 to midnight, of course, everybody's going to bed.
Right.
That number is a lot lower. But anyway, it's a ratings ploy. But nevertheless, it gave me an opportunity to get back on. And then from 9 to 10, Cole and I were doing backstage interviews while JR and the King were doing the broadcast. Okay. So it worked out fine. And then eventually they moved to where JR and the King did both hours, and Cole and I just did the first, or just did backstage interviews. And Cole and I continued to do the syndicated shows. And that was pretty much that for the next couple of years. And then the next one that was brought in was the coach.
Right, but you were very well known. He's a bitter person. You were very well known with your interviews with The Rock.
Right. And that was
Now, did
how
at one point did The Rock say, "Hey, I want Kevin Kelly," or he didn't care, or did he like to have you to do the interview with because you had good chemistry or whatnot?
nobody ever told me that, but that was kind of always the feeling that I got.
Okay.
Because The Rock and I knew each other from Florida through Rocky Johnson,
Oh
and
yeah.
we got along well. I did the interviews with him when he was first coming in. Um, I was there with him sort of since day one.
I remember
Um,
doing TV once, um, WWF. I don't remember where it was, and I was in the locker room. The Rock came in, and I shook his hand, and he's like, "Oh, you're friends with Rocky, huh?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, okay." He sat right down next to me and opened up his bag, and just like I was just one of the boys, just changing, doing about his business.
right,
It was just like that.
just like that. That's how he was. Um,
Yep.
and yeah, did chemistry with The Rock help me? Sure, of course, because we know that Kevin works well with The Rock, and The Rock is one of our best and most consistent performers. So let's give him the guy that he plays off of well and goofs on and has all the fun with. And I
Right.
thought it was great, totally fine. Um, and I was, you know, I was there with Vince doing a lot of the producing and stuff like that. So it was very good for me to be in that backstage role because I was working a lot of times with Vince because he would be producing this or that. And
Right.
so I got a lot of great direction from him, things that I still do
Okay.
today, that I teach in seminars, like how to stand and where to be in relation to the talent and how to make
Right.
yourself look small and make them look big. And all of those different little tricks that I employed when I was there and teach today were directly from Vince McMahon.
I'm
And
gonna have to learn how to. I have to take one of your seminars before I can learn how to look small on camera.
learn how to work, kid. No, it's
Yeah.
it's a yeah, just little tricks that were always beneficial, and it was always great. But so to go back to the question about Vince Russo, he seems to know both, and you mentioned the coach being bitter. Now I'll play the flip side of that. I think Coach is Coach is bitter about his second run in WWE because it
Okay.
was terrible. And he
Right.
was mistreated and he was told one thing and another thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be bitter too. Especially where you're coming from ESPN or you're going to ESPN or whatever it was, and you think you're going to do one thing and you do another and you wind up looking bad in the process, and that's not certainly where anybody wants to be. But both Coach and Vince Russo are convinced that Vince is coming back. And both are well within their purview to
Right.
have conversations with Vince McMahon. Now, I'm not saying that either one has picked up the phone and talked to Vince McMahon, but I'm saying that both of them have Vince McMahon's phone number. And both of them, neither of them,
Mm.
are shy about calling Vince. Both of them had a really good relationship with Vince.
Oh wow.
And there would never be a doubt in my mind if Coach was to be on the phone and call Vince McMahon up and say, hey, what's going on with this or that? Is there anything you want me to float out there? Is there any story that's going on? And the same with Vince
Mm.
Russo. I wouldn't be shocked if either one of them, if both of them haven't talked to him
Oh
because they
wow.
want to know what's
That's
going
pretty
on.
interesting insight.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to help their own podcasts and their own careers,
Sure.
but I would say that they have an educated guess. And as soon as I heard this rumor, that was the first thing I thought of. I was like, man,
Mm-hmm.
both Coach and Russo have been alluding to the fact that Vince McMahon is going to make a comeback at some point. And both would be of the mind to call Vince and find out what the deal is.
I
And Vince
wonder when he.
McMahon, oh, hang on. There you are.
Okay. I'm. I'm wondering in the whole when he sold out if he had anything in writing that he had to wait like a non-compete.
Could very well be. And everything is negotiable.
Right.
Um, I would imagine that when you are removed from the company in such a way that there are many, many, many legal aspects to such a public exit,
Right.
because you were so important. It's not just like, hey, pal, we're finishing you up, and here's your notice.
Right.
It goes through lawyers and it's negotiated, and I'm absolutely sure that there may have been some sort of language in there that may have given Vince a bit of a, he has to wait X amount of time,
Right.
or maybe not. Maybe he's so big that he was able to take that out, negotiate that out of any, separation agreement between the two. How much time has passed? Well, quite a bit. And Vince has been making overtures of wanting to get back and do something.
Right.
Again, Vince was within an eyelash of buying the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, wow.
Vince was within an eyelash of buying the entire CFL, the Canadian Football League.
Hmm.
These were rumors that were more fact than rumor, and has been publicly documented now, especially
Right.
the CFL. When I was there, the CFL was going to happen. And then that led to the formation of the XFL because Vince wanted to get into football.
And then led to a lot of pay cuts.
A lot. And they hired a
Yeah.
bunch of people. And then when it didn't work out, they let go a bunch of people.
Right.
And that's just one of those things. Excuse me. That's just one of those things that happens. Same thing, at the same time, Vince had bought WCW, and Vince was gearing up to run at least two separate brands, maybe ECW being a third, and hired a bunch of people to be in the office to run those events, to book the buildings, to et cetera, et
Right.
cetera. And then all of those people got let go
Wow.
because we wound up never running a separate brand. It's
Right.
just the way it goes. And a lot of that had to do with television because he couldn't secure separate television for WCW, and therefore having a separate touring brand made absolutely no sense. So owned the intellectual properties, owned all the talent, owned everything, and just found a way to make it work with the network. I had written there was always a on the next to last page of the magazine, WWF magazine, there was a columnist called The Informer, which for years was Vince Russo. And then I started writing The Informer, and it was just basically, kind of a spoof on the dirt sheets, where the Informer had all the gossip and all the news and was writing a bunch of gaga. So one thing that I wrote one time is that Vince had the idea. A little known fact about Vince McMahon is that when he was young, he was obsessed with flying in outer space, and that Vince McMahon wanted to be an astronaut. And this is me just making up all of this, but the point of it is that Vince was so enthralled with space that he wanted to have a satellite in outer space, and he wanted to eventually have his own network. He wanted to have eventually his own channel. And it began with him putting his own satellite into orbit. And so
Wow.
the Informer, so I write that along with a bunch of other gaga about Val Venus being seen at this club with this, whatever Hollywood actress, and a bunch of alluding, page 6 type gossipy stuff. And Shane McMahon comes down and says, Kevin, who told you about Vince and the satellite stuff? And I was like, I just made it up. He said, we've talked about him having his own, us having our own network. I was
So
like,
we learned today that Kevin Kelly
yes,
from the In Ring Wrestling Podcast gave
yes,
Stephanie McMahon her start. She was his intern.
yes,
We also learned that Kevin Kelly, with his writing, inspired Vince McMahon to start the WWE Network. Man, there's
yeah,
a
that
lot of
too.
stuff we're learning today. Wow. You got
I
R-Truth his start in wrestling.
I
You know,
did.
Kevin, there's
I
a lot.
discovered him.
You're very, very underrated. That's all I gotta say.
It's I always said I'm like Forrest Gump. I was just there for a lot of stuff. And just had a knack for knowing kind of what was going on, but this was complete nonsense. This was
Right.
gaga. And but I happened to hit upon it, and Shane was always cool with me, and he was like, it's something we've really talked about. I was like, oh, he thought I was like, like I somehow heard a rumor and I was spreading that rumor, and I was like, no, I just
So
completely
this
made
is
this up.
thoughts in my head there, Shane.
Yeah, just
So
occasionally,
with all this being said, all this stuff with Vince always being an entrepreneur, wanting to get into football, wanting to get into, you know, we hear bare knuckle fighting championships, all this stuff.
right.
So there's the thought of Vince getting back in the business with Tony Khan and AEW is definitely a possibility.
It's definitely a possibility. Now you have to look at it from Tony Khan's point of view as well. Is will it work for AEW? And I don't see how it couldn't work
Right. Hurt him.
because it certainly isn't right. It's not going to hurt. And I think again there would be people within, there would be negative publicity because of everything that Vince is accused of, but who's going to write those stories? Who's going to tell that? Is WWE, is TKO going to publicly come out and say bad things about AEW now because Vince works there? God, no, they're not.
Yeah.
They're going to avoid it. So
Oh
I think
man,
there would be.
I would love to be a, a fly in the wall in Meltzer's house if Vince was with Tony Khan.
I think there would be. It'd be interesting what Meltzer would write, because how could Meltzer say it's a bad idea
Right.
when you
Yeah,
have
that's
the
very
most
true.
knowledgeable, you have the most knowledgeable guy over the last half century in the industry wanting to come and work with you, work for you, partner with you, whatever the relationship might be.
Right.
How could you take that as a negative? You could say, well, because of all of Vince's baggage, which is a fair point, that negative publicity is negative publicity. But
Right.
again, I don't think there's a lot of people that know what AEW is.
Very
I
true.
know that just in my little area here in central Pennsylvania, as I've been out promoting, the pro wrestling on Saturday, August 9th, Carlisle Expo Center, getthetix.com.
There you go.
People have been talking to me and they're like, Vince isn't, or wrestling isn't what it used to be. And I haven't liked it. And I watched AEW for a little while and then I stopped. They still watch WWE. They just
Right.
don't get that into it. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. But they used to watch AEW and then they've stopped. So, is AEW going to make a bold move? I think we have to wait and see. It's too soon to tell. But I think from both of our perspectives, Casey, it wouldn't shock us if it did happen.
No, nothing shocks me in this industry. But the
Was
fact
there ever,
is,
okay, do
AEW is
you
not
remember, let
a household
me
name,
ask,
but WWE is
WWE is a
because of
household name.
Vince.
And I'm telling you what, that those executives at Warner Brothers, they know Vince McMahon's name and reputation as well.
Sure.
And they've made a big investment in AEW, and they would like a return on that investment. And I'm not saying they're not getting one, but I'm saying it makes them look even better if they're the ones that bring Vince McMahon back to TV. And holy hell, he's the most recognizable name that there is,
Exactly.
and gives you a big talking point in negotiations down the road or whatever. And that's the other thing too. Tony Khan could use the help from Vince. I'm not saying creatively, but I'm saying just in terms of star power and name recognition and all of those types of things. It instantly makes AEW a bigger company.
It doesn't
And
get
if you
bigger
want to
than Vince.
you want to renegotiate a deal and get more money for your company, that might be the way to do it. It certainly isn't going to come from, and it has been talked about. Right. They've signed just about every available free agent. And it doesn't look like that there will be any more, at least for the time being. And even they have said, AEW has said now that they're going to take kind of like a more selective approach if they're bringing in guys that used to be with WWE. If right. Say, a Randy Orton or a John Cena or a Roman Reigns, a huge name, came available, that they wouldn't obviously move heaven and earth to bring them into their company, because they would instantly be the biggest, most recognizable stars that the company has.
Sure.
But Vince McMahon, that's a game changer. And
greatest heel ever.
The greatest heel ever.
Yep.
Ever. All right, let me ask you a rumor. Let me ask you a rumor question. Were there some rumors, of course, you've been aligned with, and I've been part of it too, everything from Costa Rica and Aruba and all these different things that never happened. Tours across the country, military bases, et cetera, et cetera. What's the biggest rumor that you thought was going to happen? Was there one that you were convinced was going to happen and were shocked that it didn't?
Well, one thing is I worked on a tour to Pakistan
Oh.
during the wars.
Oh, Jesus.
And you'd be, and I'm talking, we were really far into it. I mean, not just like, hey, what about doing a tour of Pakistan? No, we were meetings after meetings. I mean, it was far. I had talent I talked to, and I remember one, the warlord. He's like, "Yeah, I went to Baghdad. There's bombs going off in my hotel room. I don't care. I'll go." And I'm thinking this. I'm just laughing. So I mean, that was a big thing that I was working on for a long time. That I didn't really. I'm the type of person I really didn't publicize stuff because I didn't want to be that kind of guy.
Right.
But I will tell you, I got booked on um, booked on a trip to the islands to the Bahamas, and by Dory Funk Jr. and the Savolis.
Oh.
And Dory called us afterwards and was mad because we weren't there. We no showed, but meanwhile he never sent us our tickets or anything because he was starting to go a little, you know. And this was a long time ago. I think the biggest like, oh yeah, there's gonna be a tour to Jamaica, you know, stuff like that, or the
Yeah.
islands. You always hear the islands and stuff like that. So, but it's one of those things you have to throw it on the wall. You don't know what's gonna stick. It could be the best thing, the biggest thing that ever happened, or it could be, you know, just nothing. You know, it happened. I think the biggest thing was with the Urban Wrestling Alliance with BET. So we have a
Yes.
national program. They brought Rocky Johnson in because I'm sure they're trying to get the rub off his son, The Rock, to run it. I mean, we went for meetings in hotels, and they were putting myself and Mike Modest in a tag team like a Legion of Doom 2.0 kind of thing, and it was like the biggest thing, huge. I mean, they were talking all kinds of stuff, talking money, everything, and just gone, nothing.
Yeah.
I think Rocky got into the till
Oh,
too early.
whoops. That happens. And of course, there have been a lot of fly by night promotions over the years from Paul Alperstein's AWF. And
Yeah,
before that was Herb Abrams and the UWF. A lot of companies that have come and gone that it looked like it was going to be something and turned out that it was not. But is there more than just smoke regarding Vince McMahon and AEW? Time will tell, and we will find out. Share your thoughts on what you might think. We would love to hear your thoughts, good or bad. Comment all over social media. These clips on YouTube that are gaining so much steam and traction, these shorts are amazing. Thousands and thousands of people are viewing them each and every week. And of course, you can share your thoughts throughout social media with Casey and I. We're the ones who see them, and
yep.
we'd be the ones who respond. So we'll be more than happy to answer your questions, good or bad, and what your thoughts are. I'll never watch AEW again, or oh my God, this could be the greatest thing ever, or somewhere in
Right.
between. But could Vince really be joining AEW? Could Tony Khan and Vince McMahon be getting into business together? By the time you see this, it could have already happened.
Yeah.
Which is, we talked about R-Truth getting fired, and then of course, just by us talking about it, he immediately got rehired. So you're
Yeah.
welcome.
This show has a lot of power.
It really does. Now, Casey, let me ask you a question. Your daughter, of course, went and saw that independent wrestling show a couple of weeks ago, and
Yes.
and has Izzy shared any interest in getting involved in the wrestling industry?
No. That's
Well,
the
wait a
double
minute now.
standard. She's not allowed.
She's not allowed. It
Nope.
was Chase would have been
Kayfabe.
Chase would have been handed right to Norman Smiley in NXT if he had
Right.
decided he wanted to become a professional wrestler.
Right.
He would have been signed instantly, if not sooner. But is he? No.
No. Sorry.
But
Not gonna happen.
Dad, it's my dream.
Ask Vince. Look what happened to Stephanie.
Well, look what happened to Stephanie. I mean, she's exactly where he thought she would be.
Well,
Big
luckily that Vince put her in the right department to be interned by the right people,
Yeah,
to all
that
the
was it.
tutelage, to teach her to be the corporate woman in power woman that she became.
Right, that
Thank
was
you, Kevin
us
Kelly.
in the new media department. Me and Jim Monsees and Vince Russo. Say this and not that, Stephanie. Come on, you need to do better. Yeah, like that happened. We were all just lucky we didn't get fired. But we're interested in the fans' thoughts. And who knows what will happen by the time we get back with you next Sunday for a live edition right after the 4th of July. Casey's going to be very exciting. Do you have any 4th of July plans? Are you going out? Are you going to go see fireworks, or is it too soon to tell?
It is very too soon to tell. I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. Well, yes, I do. I'm going shopping with my daughter.
There you go. And Daddy will bring the credit card, and everything will be fine.
Yes.
Oh, that's so funny. Again, I have 2 sons, and I couldn't imagine having a daughter because I would just be like, see this, room that you're in? Well, you're going to stay there until I let you out.
Yes, I kept her in there until she went to college.
Yeah, right.
I will say that she is the greatest daughter anyone could ever ask for. She's the best.
Even when I knew her and saw her all the time, when she was just a young little thing, she was already, full of sass and hand on the hip and had no problem giving her point of view. She'd be awesome.
I took a picture at the concert last night. This is a selfie of both of us, and both of us were like, she was exactly. I said, Izzy, let's take a selfie, and we both instantly went to it like that. And I'm like, there's no denying it. She's my daughter.
That's awesome.
But well, she's the best.
You and their mom did a great job raising both of them, and they're both great kids. And Chase is on his career as a policeman and is going to work very hard in keeping the community of Boynton Beach safe. And no matter what your daughter decides to do after college, she's going to be successful as well. You've got 2 great kids.
And your youngest is going off to college very soon.
So we went to we had our orientation, and when Cameron got his schedule and his room assignment,
oh wow,
just it all became real. Like he kept saying, I just don't believe it. I don't believe that I'm accepted. I don't believe that I'm going to get in. I don't believe that I'm doing this. And he was handed his schedule, and it's like, oh, wow, I'm really doing this. And then there was an issue with his email, and he wasn't receiving emails. Oh, we sent you your rooming assignment, and here it is on the screen. And he took a picture of it, and he's going to have 2 roommates, and he's going to be in the whatever dorm he's going to be in. And I'm like, yeah, dude, this is really happening. This is how this is. And this school that he's going to, Penn College of Technology, man, it's no joke. Like when I went to Florida State, it was goof off city. I didn't do squat and passed and graduated. But this is real. Like he's going to become an airline. He's going to work on airplanes.
Oh, nice.
And they're like, yeah, we take this very seriously because if you're in automotive, and the guy said, I'm not demeaning the automotive program, but if you get into a car accident, your chances are you're walking away from it. You get in a plane crash, you ain't walking away.
Yeah.
Oh, so you have to know what you're doing. And for like his senior project, he's going to have to basically build a cockpit. And he's going to have to put all the dials and the instruments and everything together, and he's going to have to know every single thing about everything that's in a cockpit.
As a parent, it's always nice to know that, you know what, I don't have to worry about my son or my daughter because they got a good career ahead of them, or they got something, they're going to be fine. That's always good to feel. Let me tell a real quick story about Chase when he was a freshman in college. He was up in Pennsylvania, Franklin Marshall College. The first year, school. Yeah, they couldn't pick where they're going to live because of diversity and all this stuff. They just put everyone together. So my son, his roommate was from what country? A little country next to India, in between there and Russia, where Mount Everest is. Nepal.
Tibet, Nepal.
No, Nepal. He was from Nepal. So I said, "Hey Chase, what's your roommate's name?" I don't know. And 6 months later, come home from Christmas break. Hey Chase, what's your roommate's name? I don't know. The whole year, I said, Chase, do you know your roommate's name, or you just can't say it because he's from a different country? He's like, I don't know. He lived with a kid in a very small dorm the whole year. I said, how do you get a hold of him? I'm like, he says, my side's by the light switch. I just flip the switches. Hey, so hey, you. The whole year living with him, didn't know his name.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Here and again, I think that the kids that Cameron is going to be rooming with are not in the aviation program.
Okay.
So they're going to be on a different schedule than him. I know Cameron has to go to class Monday through Friday over at the old Williamsport Airport,
Okay.
which is where the aviation program is. He has to be there before 8 o'clock because first class starts at 8 a.m. They said if you're not in the room at 7:59, the door is locked.
Wow.
So he has to be there 8 o'clock, and he's there until 3 every day, Monday through Friday. And then he has a math course at like 6 o'clock, and he has that 3 nights a week.
Wow.
So there's not a lot of time for Gaga. And
definitely not what you did at Florida State.
No, I went to school for Gaga and also got a degree.
Yeah.
I said one point I was majoring in alcohol abuse
Yeah,
because
exactly.
that was pretty much what I did. But
Yeah, because
somehow,
when you
some
went
way,
there, it was probably the #1 party school in the country.
yeah,
Yeah.
it had really every year we were very proud, of our rankings in terms of being a
Yeah.
party school. We were my last year full year and then one more semester, it was like our phone was ringing off the hook on a Friday because people knew that we knew what was going on.
Oh, wow.
So they would call us, find out where we were going or find out where we were starting our night. Then they would come over to our place and everybody would pregame and then we would head out to wherever. So it was like, we should just have a recording. Like we should have the 900. We should have the hotline and make some money off of this.
Exactly.
And charge people for this information that we had. But
that's it.
It was fun. Yeah. And my roommates were from Stewart, so where we grew up. So we were friends in high school. And
nice.
One of them graduated with me. Another one graduated 2 years later, graduated with my wife, Doria.
Okay.
So we were all friends. And then it was like, and the younger guy, like his dad was real, like, kind of hardcore dad, real serious. And he said, we went over to the house during Christmas break and it's like, hey, Zane did really well in school. I want to thank you boys for helping him out. And we were like,
you're welcome there.
You're welcome. We didn't do anything. We taught him what not to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Eventually he got with the program though. And he was right with us, but yeah. Again, you take things for granted, I guess, when you're a dad, but you really can't because you're working hard and constantly on guard with what's going on with your kid. This spam risk is calling me again. Who is this guy?
Maybe
they
Vince.
got intel about. Maybe it's
Vince wants us to drop something on the In-Ring Wrestling podcast. Float something out there for him.
He told Kevin Steen, Vince McMahon told Kevin Steen, "Hey, I love it when you get on there and give the fans the business. Get on there and you give the marks some business. I love that." So then Kevin Steen knew, oh, good, I'm doing the right thing. I need to go on and write this stuff and hammer the fans. All right, so that's going to do it. We've given everybody enough of our time, and everybody has spent enough of their time with us. So let's do this again next week, Casey, okay?
Perfect.
We'll give our thoughts about all the things that are happening in the wrestling world. Plus, we'll take a look back at some classic moments with Casey throughout his career, and we'll talk about what's going on in the industry as a whole. So for our creator and our muse, Casey Thompson, I'm Kevin Kelly. Thanks so much for joining us on the In-Ring Wrestling Podcast, and we'll see you next time.
But Vince, we're done. You can call now.